What is going on, fight fans and fight family? I'm coming to you doing this video with a bit of sad news. The great heavyweight champion George Foreman passed away yesterday. So I thought it would be proper for me to do a take on George's career. I want to come at it from a different point of view. It is very sad whenever someone passes away, but according to what I read, it seemed that he passed peacefully. So what I would like to do is I would like to actually take a look at Big George's career. George Foreman finished his career with a record of 76 wins, 5 losses, 68 of his 76 wins coming by knockout. Now that is very impressive, meaning that only 8 of his fights went the distance. George Foreman debuted in 1969. His first fight in June 23rd of 1969 was against a man named Dale Waldham. It was fought at Madison Square Garden. He won the fight by TKO in the 3rd round. Now, what I want to do is I want to go through some of George's fights that stand out to us. I just realized that in his 4th fight, he fought Chuck Wepner in August of 1969. He won that fight by TKO in the 3rd round. Moving on in his career, after that, his next fight of note was, I'm kind of looking at some of the guys that he fought. I'm just, like I said, I'm looking for fights that stand out to me, fights that will probably stand out to you as well. In 1970, George Chavallo, that's who George fought in August 4th, 1970, which is another fighter we know. Another fight he won by TKO in the 3rd round. From there, his next fight of note would have been in, let's see what we got here, fight fans. The next fight of note would have been in 1972 when he fought Miguel Angel Paez. In this fight, he won that fight by knockout in the 2nd round. And that was for the Pan American heavyweight title. That fight was fought in Oakland, California. And what also stands out to me about a lot of these fights is George weighed 217 at that fight. So it kind of reminds you of the shape that George was in. Some people only remember George in his 2nd career, his 2nd stint, which we're going to compare to see if it was better than the first. But, George was pretty fit then. His next fight of note would have been in 1973, January of 1973, in Kingstown, when he defeated Joe Frazier by knockout in the 2nd round. A lot of you remember that fight. It was 1973 Ring Magazine Fight of the Year. And he became the WBC heavyweight champion. He knocked, how many times? This says Frazier was knocked down 3 times. I thought he knocked him down 4 or 5 times. I'm sorry, 3 times in the 1st round and 3 times in the 2nd round. I was going to say, I thought he knocked him down 5 or 6 times. That was George, probably, that might have been George Foreman's best fight. George was just destructive in that fight. Not to mention, Joe Frazier was undefeated in that fight. George wins that fight and becomes the WBC heavyweight champion. In September of the same year, he defended that belt against Jose Ramon, who he knocked out in the 1st round. Then in 1974, he takes on Big Ken Norton, who he TKO'd. He won by TKO in the 2nd round. That would be March of 1974. And then George went on to fight Muhammad Ali. He had a good little run until he ran into Ali. This was the fight when he got rope-a-doped. He lost that fight where he got knocked out, which is the only time George Foreman was ever knocked out. He got knocked out in the 8th round by Ali. George weighed 220 pounds in that fight. Ali 216 and a half. And it still is considered one of, maybe even a top 10 upset victory in the heavyweight division to this day. Then George goes on to fight a few more fights before he went into retirement. In 1976, he fought Ron Lau, who he beat by knockout in the 5th round. And that was for the North American Boxing Federation Heavyweight Championship. It also was the 1976 Ring Magazine Fight of the Year. He fought George Frazier a 2nd time. I think a lot of us forget about this fight. He fought George Frazier again in 1976, June of 1976, where he knocked out Joe Frazier again. This time in the 5th round, Frazier was knocked down twice in the 5th. He goes on to fight a few more times in 1976, and then in 1977 he fights twice. He fought Pedro Augusto, and then he fought Jimmy Young, which is a fight that I do remember, a fight that he lost by unanimous decision. He was knocked down in the 12th round. After that, George Foreman retired, and he did not show back up until March of 1987. A whole 10 years, George Foreman took off, and he started Act 2 of his career. So in 1977, his first fight back, which he won by knockout in the first round by Steve Zolski, a fighter that I do not remember. In 87, he fought a few more times. 88, his next fight of note wasn't until March of 1988 when he fought Dwight Muhammad Qawi, which he won by TKO in the 7th round. He continued to stay busy. And then the next fight of note, I would say, would be when would be in June of 1989 when he fought Burt Cooper. He fought Jerry Cooney in January of 1990. And then in 1991, he fought Evander Holyfield, a fight that he lost by unanimous decision. Now, Holyfield was hitting, as they say, he was hitting Big George with everything but the kitchen sink. But he did not knock him down nor knock him out, but he did win the fight by unanimous decision. He fought Jimmy Ellis in December of 91, a fight he won by TKO in the 3rd round. He fought Alex Stewart in April of 92. Then he fought Tommy Morrison. Tommy Morrison was 36-1 at the time. George weighed 256. Tommy weighed 226. A fight that George lost by unanimous decision. It says that Foreman was deducted 1 point in round 10. Then he shows up over a year later in the fight that is probably, other than Ali, his most memorable fight. He fought Michael Moore in November of 1994. This fight I remember very well because I saw this fight live. I saw every second of every minute of the fight. George Foreman knocks him out in the 10th round. Michael Moore made a disastrous decision by standing in front of George. His trainer, Teddy Atlas, at the time was telling him, Mike, the only way he can win this fight is by knockout. He's looking to land a big shot. Mike did not take the warning. He stood in front of George. George hitting with that 1-2. That stunned, and he came back with that quick 1-2. He put Moore down, and Moore was out. So to end George's career, he defended his title in April of 1995, where he beat Alex Schultz. He fought again in November of 1996, where he fought Crawford Grimsley, a fight that he won by unanimous decision. And then George's last 2 fights, George fought Lou Salvarez in April of 1997, a fight that he won by split decision. And then his very last fight, November of 1997, 3 years after he beat Michael Moore, he fought Shannon Briggs, a fight that he lost by majority decision. Now, I got to be honest, that's a fight I'm going to have to go back and watch again because I don't really remember it clear. But what I remember by the Shannon Briggs fight, I know that there were a lot of boxing commentators that said that George Foreman won that fight, that he was absolutely robbed. I know Jim Lampley is one of those people who said that the scorecards were 116-112, 117-113, and then 114-114. So that's a fight that, you know what, maybe in the near future I will revisit, because I have been saying that I would like to go through some old fights that happened before, and some well before I started my channel. And really go over those fights and kind of give a analysis on those fights. But that was the great career of George Foreman. Now, not only was George Foreman a great fighter and he finished with a great record, he was a 2-time heavyweight champion. George Foreman was also very famous for his George Foreman grill. That George Foreman grill was a big seller. I don't know anyone, including myself, who did not have one of those George Foreman grills. And he was also known for the great work that he did on HBO as a commentator. I thought that George Foreman was a very good boxing commentator, something he probably could have did for a long time. So he not only was a great fighter, but he had a lot of other avenues that he went at, and I thought that he did good at those as well. Well, fight fans, there you have it. That's my thoughts on now the late great George Foreman. Give me your thoughts on the champ. Were you someone who's old enough that you remember his fights from the 70s? Me, I was born in 75, so the fights that he fought in the 70s, Ken Norton, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, those were fights that I only, saw later on in my life on like when they showed like classic fights used to come on ESPN, or even when we got into the internet age where you can go back and watch the fights on YouTube and areas of that. All right, fight fans, give me your thoughts on George Foreman. Where do you have George Foreman ranked? Like me, I think that he was a top 15 great heavyweight. Not a top 5, not a top 7, but I do think he was a top 15 all-time great. Give me your thoughts on where you have Big George ranked. Give me your favorite George Foreman memory. Mine's will always be that Michael Moore fight. I was 19 years old, and I was watching that fight live. So that's going to always be my biggest George Foreman moment. All right, fight fans, that's all I got for this one. RIP to the champ. I'll let y'all later.
Bye.
Goodbye, George.
So long, George.
Good luck, George.
Thanks, George.
Goodbye, George.
Goodbye, George.
Goodbye, George.
Goodbye, George.
We'll miss you, George. Good luck, George. Goodbye, George. Good luck.
God bless you, George.
Keep grilling, George.
Goodbye, George.
Goodbye, George.
Thanks for the memories, George.
Good luck, George.
Goodbye, George.
Goodbye, George.
George, we're gonna miss you, man.
Goodbye, George.